My wife's affair made me the richest man in my city. If someone had told me that betrayal could be the greatest investment of my life, I would have laughed in their face. A year ago, I was a regular man, content, comfortable, and completely unaware of the storm brewing in my own home. I had built a life from the ground up, a life I was proud of. I had a steady business, a house in a decent neighborhood, and a wife I adored. Her name was Olivia. Smart, ambitious, always striving for more. She worked in corporate finance, constantly networking with powerful people, always chasing the next big opportunity. I, on the other hand, was the opposite. I ran a small chain of auto repair shops, nothing glamorous, but it was honest work that paid the bills. I had no desire to climb the social ladder, no hunger for extravagance. To me, happiness was a cold beer after work, the satisfaction of fixing a stubborn engine, and the quiet comfort of coming home to my wife. I thought she saw things the same way. Looking back, I can pinpoint the moment when things started to feel off. It wasn't dramatic. There were no late-night phone calls she had to step away for, no sudden business trips that couldn't be explained. She still came home at the usual time, still kissed me goodnight, still laughed at my jokes, though now I realized the laughter had become thinner, forced. But back then, I didn't notice the cracks forming beneath the surface. What I did notice was a change in her energy. Olivia had always been driven, but now she was different, charged, almost glowing. She spoke about work with an excitement that hadn't been there before. And more than that, she spoke about her boss, Alexander Hayes, far too often. At first, it was just in passing. Alex came up with a brilliant idea today. Or, Alex thinks the market's going to shift in the next quarter. But then, it became more frequent. Alex just closed a multi-million-dollar deal. Alex is buying a penthouse downtown. Alex invited the team to his yacht this weekend. I brushed it off as admiration. Hayes was a self-made millionaire, a man who had built his empire from nothing. Olivia had always been drawn to success. She had always looked up to people who made things happen, who turned nothing into something. But admiration has a way of slipping into something more. I had never been a jealous man. I trusted my wife. I believed in what we had. So, I ignored the small unease that settled in my gut. I told myself that I was being ridiculous, that Olivia's excitement was just professional admiration, nothing more. And then, one night, everything changed. We were lying in bed, side by side. Olivia had her phone in hand, scrolling through something. I wasn't paying attention at first, just staring at the ceiling, lost in my own thoughts. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I caught something. A look on her face. Not just any look. A smirk. Slow. Subtle. The kind of smile you give when you're entertained, when you're amused, when someone is flirting with you and you're enjoying it. I had seen that smile before. I had seen it when we first started dating, when I would text her something playful late at night. I had seen it in the early days of our marriage, when we would sit across from each other in a crowded bar and share inside jokes over drinks. I had never seen it when she was looking at her phone before. A cold sensation curled in my stomach. I turned my head slightly, pretending to shift positions, just enough to glance at her screen. She noticed. Quick as lightning, she tilted the phone away, locking it as she rolled onto her side. "Good night," she murmured, pressing a quick kiss to my cheek before turning her back to me. I didn't say anything. I didn't move. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, my heart pounding in my chest. Because in that moment, I knew. I didn't need to see a name. I didn't need to read a message. That smile, told me everything I needed to know. Something had changed. And I was about to find out exactly what it was. I didn't confront her right away. I wanted to. That night, as I lay awake beside her, my mind raced with 1,000 questions. Who was she smiling at? What was she hiding? Was it just harmless flirting, or had it already gone further? But something in me held back. Maybe it was pride. Maybe it was fear of hearing the truth. Or maybe, just maybe, it was something deeper. A quiet, cold part of me that whispered, "Don't react. Gather proof. If she's lying to you, don't just catch her, destroy her." So, I waited. I started paying attention. Not to what she said, but to what she didn't say. The small things. Like how she started dressing up more for work. Olivia always looked professional, but now she put in extra effort, new heels, a more form-fitting dress, a touch of perfume she never used to wear. Like how her phone was suddenly always face down. She used to leave it lying around, but now, she kept it close, guarded. Like how, some nights, she seemed distracted. She would sit across from me at dinner, nodding along as I talked about my day, but her eyes were somewhere else. I played along. I acted normal. I kissed her goodbye in the mornings, I asked about her work. And all the while, I watched. And then, I decided to test her. One Friday evening, as she was getting ready for bed, I sat on the couch and casually asked, "So, what's the plan for the weekend?" She glanced at me through the mirror as she brushed her hair. "Oh, nothing special," she said lightly. "Maybe we can go out for brunch on Sunday?" A lie. I knew it before she even said the words. Because earlier that day, I had overheard something. I had stopped by her office to surprise her with coffee, something I used to do all the time. But instead of going straight to her desk, I lingered near the reception, just for a moment. And that's when I heard them. Two of her co-workers. "Are you going to Alex's place tomorrow?" "Of course. Everyone's going. I heard he's flying in some private chef." "It's going to be insane." A casual conversation. Something I wasn't meant to hear. And yet, Olivia had just told me she had no plans. I took a slow breath, forcing a smile. "Sounds good," I said. "Sunday brunch it is." But inside, I was ice cold. She was lying to me. Now, I just needed to know why. The next day, I told her I had errands to run. She barely paid attention, too busy working on her laptop. Around noon, she told me she was going out for coffee with a friend. Another lie. I let her leave. Then, I followed her. She didn't go to a cafe. She didn't meet a friend. She got into an Uber, and I stayed far behind in my own car, tracking her through the city. And then, she arrived. A luxury penthouse in the most expensive part of town. The kind of place where millionaires sip champagne on their balconies, looking down on the rest of the world. She entered through the private elevator, security letting her in without hesitation. Like she'd been there before. Like she belonged there. I didn't need to see inside to know who was waiting for her. Alexander Hayes. Her boss. The man she talked about constantly. The man she admired. The man who had everything I didn't: power, influence, the kind of wealth that turned people into gods. I clenched the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. So, this was it. The truth. She wasn't just having an affair. She was selling herself to climb the ladder, trading our marriage for a shot at luxury. But she had underestimated me. Because I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to win. And by the time I was done, she would regret ever thinking she could betray me and get away with it. I sat in my car for nearly 2 hours, watching the penthouse entrance. Olivia wasn't just visiting her boss, she was spending real time with him. The thought made my blood boil, but I forced myself to stay calm. Anger wouldn't help me now. I needed control. I needed strategy. I drove home, my mind racing with possibilities. Should I confront her the moment she walked through the door? Should I expose her right away? No. That would be too easy for her. Too simple. Olivia had lied to my face, looked me in the eyes and told me she had no plans. She thought she was in control. That night, when she finally came home, I was already in bed, pretending to be asleep. I felt her slip in beside me, smelled the faint trace of cologne that wasn't mine. My stomach twisted, but I didn't move. I let her think she had fooled me. But the game had just begun. The next morning, I woke up early, kissed her on the forehead, and told her I had a busy day ahead. She smiled sleepily, stretching beneath the covers like a woman with no worries in the world. I could have screamed. Instead, I simply walked out the door, my heart pounding with cold resolve. I had a plan. The first thing I did was hire a private investigator. I wanted concrete evidence. Photos. Videos. Text logs. I needed enough proof to own her, to strip her of any chance of lying when the moment came. While the investigator worked, I played my role perfectly. I was the loving, clueless husband. I kept our routine normal morning coffee, little texts during the day, dinner together in the evenings. I even surprised her with flowers one afternoon. She didn't suspect a thing. If anything, she seemed relieved. She thought she had gotten away with it. But I had already seen the pictures. The investigator was thorough. Crystal clear images of Olivia entering and exiting the penthouse at suspicious hours. A video of her and Alex in a private restaurant, their hands touching across the table. One image, in particular, stood out, a shot of them at an exclusive event, Olivia in a dress I had never seen before, looking at Alex the way she used to look at me. She was gone. Not just physically, but emotionally. That was when I stopped feeling pain. And started thinking about revenge. I didn't want to just expose her. I wanted to ruin her. So, I set the perfect stage. One night, I suggested we host a dinner party. Just a small gathering, her colleagues, some of my business contacts. A mix of people from both of our worlds. Olivia was thrilled. She loved events like this, where she could flaunt her social skills and impress everyone with her charm. She had no idea what was coming. The night of the party, I was the perfect host, pouring drinks, cracking jokes, making everyone feel at ease. Olivia played her role just as well, moving through the crowd effortlessly. And then, I made my move. While Olivia was in the kitchen, I tapped a spoon against my glass, getting everyone's attention. Before we continue with dinner, I just want to take a moment to appreciate my wife, I said, smiling. She's been working so hard lately. And I think we should all acknowledge just how dedicated she's been to her boss, Alex Hayes. Silence. A few chuckles. Olivia stepped out of the kitchen, freezing in place. Her face went pale. But I wasn't done. You know, Olivia's been spending a lot of time with Alex. So much, in fact, that I thought it would be nice to show everyone just how much she values him. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the TV, and pressed play. The investigator's footage appeared on the screen. Photos. Videos. Olivia with Alex. Entering the penthouse. Laughing over dinner. That handhold. That look. The guests gasped. Someone dropped a fork. Olivia's hands flew to her mouth. No, she whispered. No, no, no. I turned to her, my expression unreadable. Do you have anything to say, sweetheart? She was ruined. Everything she had built, her career, her social standing, her reputation, was crumbling before her eyes. She stammered, tried to speak, but there was nothing she could say that would change what everyone had just seen. And then, the real masterpiece of my plan unfolded. The doorbell rang. I had invited one last guest. Alex Hayes himself. He walked in, confused at first, until he saw the screen. His face darkened. The room was silent, everyone watching, waiting to see what would happen next. I turned back to Olivia. Did you think he'd defend you? I asked, my voice ice cold. Did you think he'd fight for you? Alex looked at her, his expression a mix of anger and panic. He wasn't the type to let scandals like this go public. His entire career depended on his reputation. And now, his affair with a married employee had just been broadcasted in front of half the business community. Olivia's face crumbled. She knew. She had just lost everything. And I? I had just won. The morning after the party was eerily quiet. Olivia hadn't come home. Not that I expected her to. She was probably scrambling to fix the mess she had created, but deep down, she had to know it was unfixable. Her carefully crafted life had just collapsed in front of an entire room of people who mattered. I got up, brewed a cup of coffee, and stood by the window, staring out at the city. I wasn't heartbroken. I wasn't lost. I was ready. By noon, I received the first desperate attempt at damage control. A text from an unknown number. Alex Hayes, we need to talk. Urgent. I smirked. Of course he wanted to talk. He had more to lose than Olivia. His reputation, his company, his standing in the business world, everything depended on keeping his image pristine. And now, because of her, it was all at risk. I let him sweat for a few hours before I responded. Let's meet. Your office. 4 p.m. I arrived at his office exactly on time. His assistant barely made eye contact with me as she led me to a private meeting room. She knew. Everyone in his company probably knew by now. Alex was already inside, standing by the window, his back to me. When he turned around, his face was tight with barely restrained anger. But behind that anger, I saw something else, fear. Good. I'll get straight to the point, he said, running a hand through his hair. What do you want? I let the silence stretch. Finally, I leaned back in my chair and folded my hands together. You tell me, Alex. What do you think I want? His jaw clenched. Money, he said flatly. I know how this works. You'll threaten to go public, to drag this into court, and it'll be a nightmare for everyone involved. So let's skip the theatrics. What's your number? I could have played it differently. I could have told him I wanted revenge, that I wanted to watch him suffer the way he had made me suffer. But I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted power. And power, in this world, was built on money. So I named my price. Not a small sum. Not something that would feel like a slap on the wrist. Millions. Enough to hurt. Enough to make him regret ever touching my wife. His face paled slightly, but he didn't argue. He knew he had no choice. A drawn-out scandal would cost him far more than money, it would cost him his career, his influence. This is blackmail, he muttered. I shrugged. No, Alex. This is business. A tense silence followed. He exhaled sharply, grabbed a pen, and started writing the terms. I leaned forward, watching as he effectively paid me for his silence. And when I signed that agreement, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Power. I walked out of that office a very rich man. But I wasn't done. I didn't take the money and disappear. I didn't buy a sports car or go on some lavish vacation like a fool who had just stumbled upon wealth. No. I invested. I poured it into my business first. Expanded my auto repair shops, turned them into high-end service centers with premium clientele. Then, I started acquiring other businesses, small ones at first, the kind of deals Alex wouldn't even notice. But soon, my reach began to grow. Real estate. Tech startups. Smart investments that multiplied my money, until I wasn't just successful, I was dominant. And in less than a year, I had built something bigger than Alex Hayes himself. One day, an article popped up on my newsfeed. Corporate giant Alex Hayes faces financial setback amid silent investor takeovers. I laughed. He had no idea I was behind it. I was no longer just the guy whose wife had an affair with him. I was his competition. And I was winning. While I was rising, Olivia was sinking. She had tried to control the damage after the party. But corporate finance was a cutthroat world, and no one wanted to be associated with a scandal. She lost the respect of her colleagues. Clients started requesting other advisors. Her boss, the former object of her affection, distanced himself completely. He wanted nothing to do with her once she had become a liability. Soon enough, the company let her go. She tried to contact me. At first, it was subtle texts, emails. Then, more desperate calls, voicemails, showing up at places she knew I would be. I never responded. It had been months since I last saw Olivia. Months since I had shut the door in her face, leaving her to deal with the wreckage of her own choices. In those months, my life had transformed beyond recognition. I was no longer the man she had betrayed. I had one. My businesses were thriving. My investments had turned into gold mines. People who once ignored me now sought my attention. I wasn't just successful, I was powerful. And with power came something even better, freedom. I didn't think about Olivia anymore. Or at least, I thought I didn't. Until one evening, when my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. Unknown, please. One last conversation. Just hear me out. I stared at the screen, unmoving. I didn't need to check the number to know who it was. I had deleted her from my contacts, erased her from my life. But here she was, creeping back in like a shadow. I almost ignored it. Almost. But then, a thought struck me. I wanted to see her one last time. Not because I missed her. Not because I cared. I wanted to see the wreckage. I wanted to look her in the eyes and watch her realize she had lost everything. I chose the location carefully. Not a place filled with memories. Not our old favorite cafe, not the restaurant where we used to celebrate anniversaries. I picked a high-end rooftop lounge, one that she could no longer afford to visit, but one that I now owned a stake in. When I arrived, she was already there, sitting at a table near the edge of the terrace. For a moment, I almost didn't recognize her. She still dressed well, but the aura of confidence, the effortless charm she used to carry, it was gone. Her hair was styled, her makeup was perfect, but her eyes were tired. Hollow. The eyes of someone who had lost control of her own life. I took my time walking toward the table. Letting her see me. Letting her register the difference. I wasn't the same man she had cheated on. I was sharper. Stronger. More put together. My suit was tailored, my watch worth more than she made in a year. And the way people around the lounge glanced at me with respect? That was something she had never seen before. I sat down. She exhaled shakily. You actually came. I didn't bother with pleasantries. You wanted to talk. Talk. She bit her lip, gathering her thoughts. I could tell she was struggling, unsure of how to begin. Finally, she spoke. I messed up, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I lost everything. My job. My reputation. My friends. And Alex, she let out a bitter laugh. He never cared about me. The moment I became a liability, he dropped me like I was nothing. I nodded, taking a sip of my drink. Sounds about right. She flinched at my indifference. I miss you, she continued, leaning forward slightly. I miss us. I was stupid. I don't even know why I did it. Maybe I was chasing something that wasn't real. I thought I wanted that life, but it was a lie. The truth is, she swallowed hard, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. I loved you. I still do. I set my glass down, studying her. And I felt nothing. Not anger. Not pain. Not even satisfaction. She had broken me once. But I had rebuilt myself into someone she could never touch again. I used to love you, too, I said calmly. But love doesn't mean anything without loyalty. She reached across the table, her fingers brushing against mine. Maybe we could start over? Try again? I almost laughed. Not out of cruelty, but at the sheer absurdity of her request. I leaned forward slightly, my voice quiet but firm. Olivia, I said, the only reason I'm here right now is to watch you realize what you lost. She sucked in a sharp breath, her eyes widening. So that's it? You're just done with me? I gave her a slow, deliberate nod. Yes. She looked down, exhaling shakily. I stood up, tossing a few bills on the table to cover her drink. As I turned to leave, she called out one last time. "Do you ever think about what we had?" I paused, glancing back at her. "I used to," I admitted. "But now? You're just a lesson I had to learn." And with that, I walked away. She didn't follow. She didn't call out again. She just sat there, staring at the table, truly realizing, that I was gone. And that she had thrown away the best thing she ever had. Money changes people. At least, that's what I used to believe. I thought wealth corrupted, that success turned men cold and ruthless. But as I stood at the pinnacle of everything I had built, looking down at the world that once ignored me, I realized something far more profound. Money doesn't change you. It reveals you. For the longest time, I had defined myself by what I had lost. My betrayal. My pain. The destruction of the life I had built with someone who never truly valued me. I used to replay those moments in my head, the lies, the deception, the coldness that came before the inevitable truth. I let them fuel me. But now, I had everything a man could ask for. Wealth. Power. Influence. Respect. And yet, I found myself staring at my own reflection, wondering, who am I now? Because revenge had driven me, ambition had propelled me forward, but now that I had arrived, what next? The man I once was, the trusting, easygoing, content version of myself, was long gone. His dreams had been small, his world predictable. I used to wake up early, drink my coffee in silence, and head to work with a quiet sense of satisfaction. I used to believe that a good life was built on simplicity, on love, on faith in others. But here's the part that surprised me. I wasn't angry anymore. At first, success had been a weapon. Every dollar I earned, every deal I closed, every victory was another way of proving that I was better than the man I had been before. But over time, I stopped needing to prove anything. I didn't care about the past anymore. I didn't care about what had been taken from me. Because the moment I stopped defining myself by my pain, I became truly free. There's a strange thing that happens when you reach the top. The noise stops. No more doubts. No more sleepless nights wondering if you're good enough. No more second-guessing yourself. But the silence that replaces it? That's where the real challenge begins. Power, real power, isn't about money. It's about understanding people, about reading the world in a way others don't. Once you realize that every person is driven by something: fear, greed, ambition, love, you start to see the world for what it really is, a battlefield. And I had become a master strategist. I saw through people now. The fake smiles, the empty promises, the unspoken calculations behind every handshake and friendly gesture. Where once I had trusted blindly, now I analyzed. But the truth? I didn't hate it. Some men become bitter when they realize how the world really works. But for me, it was liberating. Because while others played checkers, I played chess. And I was winning. Success didn't make me a different man, it made me more myself. But something unexpected happened along the way. I stopped caring about wealth for the sake of wealth. The expensive cars, the luxury penthouse, the endless stream of meaningless social events, they all lost their appeal. I had everything I once thought I wanted, but deep down, I understood that true success isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in freedom. The freedom to wake up and know that no one controls you. The freedom to walk away from anything that doesn't serve you. The freedom to choose who you let into your life. I didn't need validation anymore. I didn't need revenge. Because true power isn't about holding on to the past. For the first time in my life, I wasn't chasing anything. I wasn't looking over my shoulder. I wasn't waiting for the next battle. I had reached a point where winning wasn't about beating someone else, it was about surpassing the man I used to be. So I started building something new. I didn't just invest in business. I invested in myself. I traveled. Not to flaunt my wealth, but to learn about the world, about different perspectives, about things I had never considered when my life was smaller. I surrounded myself with smart, ambitious, driven people, not the kind who used others, but the kind who built things that lasted. I found joy in creating rather than destroying. Where once I had torn things down, now I wanted to build something meaningful. And somewhere along the way, I realized something that shook me to my core. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at the past. Not at the people who had hurt me. Not at the world. I had won because I had evolved. And evolution is the greatest victory of all. One evening, I stood at the edge of my rooftop balcony, looking down at the city below. A year ago, I had stood in the same place, fueled by the fire of betrayal, vowing to take everything I could. But now, I felt something else. Peace. Because I had beaten the odds. I had proven to myself that I didn't need anyone else to define me. I had built my own kingdom. And I no longer needed to look back. As the night breeze rolled in, I exhaled slowly, letting go of the last remnants of my past. Somewhere out there, people were still chasing ghosts. Still bitter, still lost, still waiting for a moment that would never come. But me? I was finally free. And that was worth more than all the money in the world.